Fluto Shinzawa, his proposal for Matthias Ekholm from the Bruins would be a 2021 first round pick, center John Beecher, and defenseman Urho Vakanainen. Now, obviously, the Bruins need top four help. We have said this. This is one of the predictions we both had correct. We talked about this on Poke the Bear.
We'll take any wins we can.
Yes, this is one of the predictions that we can flaunt and say, look, we got this right. We've been saying this since forever. They need top four help, and he would provide that. Matthias Ekholm would no doubt provide a ton of help to that blue line. However, is there a chance? Now, one of the things mentioned in here that Fluto mentioned, the reason this first round pick would be so valuable is if in his open is the pick could be in the teens if the Bruins miss the playoffs. If the Bruins miss the playoffs, that pick could be in the teens. Now, I am someone who believes this core, it's aging. Krejci, Bergeron, Rask, Marchand, they're not always going to all be together forever. We know that. This could be their last year, especially with Krejci, potentially. So you want to maximize the window. That makes sense. Like, that's what you should be doing. But at the same time, do you think Sweeney's speaking today at 5. Now, I expect it's going to be a lot of COVID stuff, but if you're Sweeney, do you look at this team and say, we're just 2 pieces away from making a legit deep cup run? Because if you look at this roster, you don't get that feeling. You don't. Now, when they're all healthy, beginning of the season, we looked at this roster like the first couple of weeks and said, damn, that's pretty good. Like, you're deep at forward. You got young, fast defensemen, but then injuries have kicked in. Inconsistencies have plagued the scoring. You have the COVID stuff. You got the wear and tear probably down the stretch. And you're going to go out and give a top 4 defenseman who you need. You're going to give away 2 firsts because Beecher was a first round pick and he looks pretty good. You're going to give up a future potential top 6 centerman. You're going to give up a potential mid first round pick, which are very valuable. And Vakanainen, whatever, like, that's not a big deal. But main thing is Beecher in first. Is that a bet that the Bruins should be making?
Well, I think it all has to revolve around what you value out of that first round pick. And it's an interesting kind of discussion this year, especially because I think in a perfect world, obviously the Bruins wouldn't want to part ways with their first round pick, which I think whether it's, a guy like Ekholm or, I'm posting a story, which by the time this podcast drops should be out, but looking at potential top 6 edition with a guy like Conor Garland, who's out in Arizona, who may not be as well known as some of the big names we've mentioned, the Palmieri's, Halls, those guys. But is what I think the Bruins would ideally love to get, where he's a 25-year-old guy. He's a even strength scoring machine. He's probably not nearly close to his potential. He's a guy who will probably get you at least 25 goals a year for the next 5-6 years, but he's also probably going to cost you a first round pick as well, right? Because Arizona doesn't have a first this year because they got it taken away because that franchise is in shambles.
Forgot about that one.
But again, it's one of those situations where, do you weigh, dealing those picks up for, I think it's one thing if you want to get a guy like Garland who helps out, obviously, and who's also 25 and he's an RFA, so you could probably keep him for the long haul. For Ekholm, you have to weigh whether giving up that first is worth it too, considering the fact that you might have to let go of another young defenseman in the expansion draft as a result, right? That's something you have to weigh. But
Ekholm has a year left on his deal after this year.
He has a year left on his deal, right? So if you add him to the mix with McAvoy and Carlo and Grzelcyk and Zboril and Lozon, like, I think ideally you want to keep Ekholm. You're not giving him a first, you want to just let him go. That's but true. Still, you also have to weigh, do you lose Grzelcyk as a result? So, but I also think it's one thing this year is interesting with that first round pick where you wonder if there's more added value at also keeping, second and third round picks, that whether, the Bruins would be more willing to give up a first this year, because I think the fact that obviously there's, the guys who are in the top 10 that I think have been in the whole year. There's Owen Power. There's a few of those other kids from Michigan that have kind of separated themselves from the pack. The other Hughes brother, I think Luke Hughes. It's like those guys have been on the draft boards the entire time. But, I think you look at the fact that scouts haven't been at games at all, or rarely this year, whether it be up in junior and the NCAA, overseas especially. You wonder if the fact that there's a lack of in-house scouting, whether that adds more value to second and third round picks, where guys who maybe, if proper scouting and resources were available in a normal year without COVID, where there's some guys who are first round talent's going to be dropping quite a bit, or you find a lot more guys in the second and third rounds who we're going to look, 5-10 years from now and be like, how did that guy drop so far? It's well, because the dude was playing in the WHL, it's probably a bad example, but like, let's look at like Kale McCall, where he was in the AJHL, right? And like he was. Yeah. So like he was a legit talent there, but like, it's not like that league gets covered as much as some of these other circuits they have for junior hockey. And if you're not having scouts there to report, you could find another kind of diamond in the rough there that ends up being in a first round talent that goes to the second, third round. So that might factor into it for the Bruins in terms of what they want to, how they value that first round pick, where, as long as you got a pick in the top 60, top 90, you still have a good chance of getting a top guy. But it's definitely tough in terms of how you evaluate, what you're willing to give up, because I think ideally, I think the perfect situation, right, is you get a top 6 guy and an Ekholm, but I don't know how you're going to do it without giving up a first round for each guy, right? Maybe Palmieri's not worth the first because he's a pending free agent, but so it's a tough kind of tightrope to walk, because especially with Ekholm, because I think you're going to have a lot of other teams competing for you. Like it'd be one thing where I think the Bruins have the assets to swing a trade, but I think maybe a team that's more desperate, that like, the Bruins are not letting up a lot of goals. They've got like a solid structure right now, but they could really, really use Ekholm. Like the Winnipeg Jets need bodies. They need a guy like Ekholm, definitely, right? So
yes,
you could make the case that Philly desperately needs them, even though I don't know if they're even going to be buyers at this point based on the way they're playing. But there's teams I think are probably more desperate than the Bruins that are willing to give up a first and 2 top tier prospects. I don't know if the Bruins are willing to go that far. So it's a tough challenge for the Bruins, but I think when it comes to adding at the deadline, I think, that first round pick has to be in play, because again, look at a team like Detroit, who's had first round picks years and years and years now and haven't hit. Look at the Buffalo Sabres. I think when Jack Edwards was obliterating them for the entire broadcast on Thursday, he was going through all of their, top 10 picks they have in that lineup. How much is that helping them? How much is Rasmus Dahlin looking? Which, again, I don't know if that's a product of playing in Buffalo, but, getting consistent picks isn't, guarantee you success. I mean, look at the 2015 draft. Look at.
Oh, they played together though. They finally played together. I think that's a huge win.
Of which, you look at that too, and as bad as that first round is, look at the value they found in the second and third rounds there. I'm not saying that the 2021 draft is going to be as deep, but you're probably going to have guys like a Carlo or a Lozon who maybe could have been like a low 20s pick that fell through because of the lack of scouting. So I think that's definitely a factor you have to consider when it comes to valuing that first round pick.
You mentioned Conor Garland. You missed the biggest part of him. He's from Scituate.
He's from Scituate, Mass.
He's a masshole, like Brad Stevens.
Yes.
But what worries me though with Conor Garland is, I use worry lightly because he hasn't really shown any signs of this being this isn't his fault. He's only been in the league 3 years.
Yeah.
18 points his first year in 47 games. That's good. 39 points in 68 games, 22 of those being goals. Last season, that's very good. 25 points in 30 games this year. That's very good. 9 goals in there. That'd be near the top with the Bruins. What worries me though, and this is something we've hit on a lot, is this another guy who's a fringe top sixer, not proven. And he can't, by the way, he can't be proven. He's been in the league 3 years. It's kind of like the Kasha thing. Like, Kasha was very attractive when they got him. It was like, damn, like they got someone good. But at the same time, it's also like, it's all real potential. It's not super proven. Again, I mean, is that a product of just being in Arizona? I mean, I know they're not an offensively great team, but where would he fit into this Bruins lineup? You'd think he'd be next to Krejci on the right side. But again, that he's not proven. He's not the kind of winger that you can slot in next to Krejci and say, okay, he is not going to leave Krejci's right side. There's a chance that Garland could go in, get 0 points in 5 games, and him and Smith just switch. And that's just something that continues to happen. So again, I can't sit here and pretend like I've watched a ton of Conor Garland. I haven't. I've looked at the stats. Like I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I'm a Conor Garland expert. I know you've been big on him for a long time, and I trust your opinion. So
but he's definitely not, as much as good of a player as he is. And I mean, I think he's, I'm trying to think what the stat was. It was out of, I think, 595 NHLers since last year. He's 21st in 5-on-5 goals per 60, which is higher than Couture, Mark Stone, Patrick Kane, Philip Forsberg, Kyle Palmieri, who, it's funny, you look at Kyle Palmieri's numbers, especially the last couple of years. Very good player still. Like, if he's available and it's, a fringe NHLer and a second round pick or something, I think you do it. But a lot of his offense is generated from power play as well, which, I'd rather you like stick a guy like Ekholm up high to put on the power play than you need another guy who's going to be, at the half wall to help get that power play going. I think you need a guy who scores 5-on-5 goals, which is what Garland does. But again, he's not nearly as flashy as a Hall or a Palmieri. Like, if they traded for him, I would be very pumped because I think he's a very good player, and I think doesn't have injury issues. Continue to like get better and better each year. But also, I think you'd have a lot of people who are pissed, like, they just get another guy from Mass. This guy sucks, and it's like, no, he's got a pretty proven record, but for at least his first couple years in the NHL. But again, no, that one's going to be tough because I think you're looking at a first-round pick for that, unless you want to lump in NHL talent or a bunch of prospects. So we'll kind of see where it falls. They got a lot of guys they could be keeping tabs on. So
yeah, and that's the thing is, again, and that's the thing we continue to hit on is like, you want someone proven there. Now, I like, again, the stats show Garland and the stats certainly support him. But again, it's like, can you trust him come the playoffs? Can you guarantee that giving up a first for him, you are going to get, a good amount of points, just being able to stay next to Krejci. That's the biggest thing. Again, I feel like everyone in Boston has been scarred. No one, there's like trust issues next to David Krejci's right side.